Public Media presents Decision 2018, the Pennsylvania 9th Congressional District Debate. Live from the Sordoni Theater at the WVIA Public Media Studios, our moderator, WVIA-FM's Larry Voitko.
Good evening. I'm Larry Voitko. Welcome to the second night of the debate among the candidates for seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. Tonight, we hear from the two candidates in the 9th District. We have a live audience in the Sordoni Theater of the WVIA Public Media Studios, and they have been instructed, as you just heard, to applaud only at the beginning and conclusion of the debate. Now, due to a ruling earlier this year by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the district lines were redrawn. The 9th District is the successor to the former 11th District. It now includes the counties of Columbia, Lebanon, Schuylkill, and Carbon. This seat is open due to Congressman Lou Barletta's decision to seek a seat in the Senate. The candidates vying to represent District 9 are Republican Dan Meuser and Democrat Denny Wolf. Mr. Dan Meuser grew up in a typical middle-class family. His dad was a police detective, and his mom stayed home during his childhood. He attended the New York Maritime University and then transferred to Cornell on a Navy ROTC scholarship. Mr. Meuser joined a small manufacturing company, helping build that company into an industry leader in the power mobility field. In 2011, Governor Tom Corbett nominated him to serve as Pennsylvania Secretary of the Revenue. Mr. Meuser and his wife of 27 years, Shelley, have 3 children. He has a long history of support of nonprofit organizations such as the YMCA and the Wyoming Valley Children's Association. Mr. Denny Wolf is a lifelong resident of Columbia County and a 5th-generation dairy farmer. Mr. Wolf served on the World Trade Organization's Agriculture Technical Committee during both the Clinton and Bush administrations. In 2003, Governor Ed Rendell appointed Mr. Wolf to serve as Pennsylvania's Secretary of Agriculture. He is the founder of Camp Victory, a summer camp for children with special needs. Mr. Wolf was inspired to start Camp Victory after his youngest son, Nicholas, was born with a life-threatening liver disease. Mr. Wolf is an avid white-tailed deer hunter, and he and his wife, Josie, live in Millville. WVIA welcomes both candidates as they field questions from our panelists. Dave Bowman of WNEP. Dave has spent 38 years as a television journalist, working in stations across the United States. The last 9 as the investigative reporter for WNEP. Dave has won more than 60 local and national awards for broadcast excellence, including 6 Emmys. He is a resident of Drums, Pennsylvania. Peter Bortner, staff writer for the Pottsville Republican Herald. This native of Schuylkill County has worked at that newspaper for more than 28 years. His main beat is county government and the courts. He is a graduate of the College of William and Mary and the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. And Dr. Chris Hallenbrook, who is an instructor of political science at Bloomsburg University, where he teaches classes in political theory and American politics. His research focuses on the history of political thought. Now, the format for this hour-long debate has been agreed to by both campaigns. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Responses to the questions by our panelists will be held to 90 seconds. However, at the discretion of the moderator, an additional 30 seconds may be allotted to each candidate for rebuttal. All times will be strictly enforced. All the questions are devised by the individual panelists, each of whom submitted a series of questions to WVIA for review prior to tonight's debate. I, as moderator, also have the option to ask a question. We move now to the opening statements, as determined by a coin toss held earlier this evening. Mr. Dan Meuser will begin. Mr. Meuser.
Thank you. Nice seeing everyone. I want to thank WVIA very much for this opportunity. Well, we're kind of deep into the campaign here, and I think everybody sees we're deep into something else. There's been a lot of manure swung on me during this campaign, but all I have to say is that with all this manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. Our campaign has been very inclusionary, very grassroots, and we have received many endorsements from state representatives, county commissioners, township supervisors that we're very proud of. I'm particularly proud of the endorsement from the State Troopers Association, the County Detective Association, as well as the Veterans for Trump. And I want to salute our veterans and thank you for your service. About my background, much of it was described here, but growing up, yes, my father was a police officer. My mom did stay home with us, but when we went to school, she went off to work. We grew up in a very middle-class household, but I don't think my brother and I, who's here, and my sister would change any of it. My dad once heard me say that we were middle class, and he leaned down at me and said, "You know what, Dan? We were lower middle class." But again, it was terrific. Over the past 30 years, I've lived here in Luzerne County. My wife and I of 28 years have raised our children here. During this time, yes, I did help a business grow from a small business into a pretty large business, making some wonderful, incredible products to keep people moving. I also served as the Secretary of Department of Revenue. There, I applied business practices, conservative principles, transformed the department into a taxpayer advocacy organization. By setting out such a mission, we treated taxpayers like customers, and we were recognized for our work. We were named the most improved Department of Revenue in the country during my time there. Now I'm running for Congress. I want to work to continue to keep our country moving forward. I want to advance our area here at home.
Your time has elapsed. Mr. Wolf.
Yes, good evening. It is a pleasure to be here at WVIA this evening. I want to start out by saying civility, something that is lacking today, or we the people, something you don't hear much anymore. I'm a dairy farmer. I'm farming the same farm my dad and my granddad farmed. My wife Josie and I, we have 150 registered Holsteins. I had the privilege of serving as Pennsylvania Secretary of Agriculture, where we put in programs like the Pennsylvania Preferred Campaign and updated the regulations for commercial kennels in Pennsylvania. Also, we put in place a program that was called the Center for Dairy Excellence to help the struggling dairy farmers in Pennsylvania. They are still using that program today as they're experiencing very low prices. I served on the WTO and represented the United States at the Hong Kong round. And of course, Camp Victory has been a very important part of my life, something that I've dedicated the last 30 years to. I think as a farmer, I can honestly say I have rural values. Work ethic, integrity, and respect for your fellow man. They're all things that are very important to me and people that live in rural Pennsylvania. My opponent moved to Pennsylvania from New York, lives in the 8th Congressional District in $1 million house, and he lacks the temperament to serve as a member of Congress. When I introduced myself to him and extended my hand at our first debate, he told me to go to hell. He even considers me evil. He compares me to ISIS. He said Democrats are a greater risk to this country than ISIS today. He lacks the integrity. He was fined $80,000 for Medicare fraud for giving kickbacks. Congress needs people that have integrity, people that will bridge the gap and not make the gap wider. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Well, we move on to the portion of the question portion of our debate tonight. And the first question comes from Dave Bowman. And Mr. Wolf will be the first to respond to the question. Dave?
Thank you, Larry. Mr. Wolf, like most Democrats, you favor the mandate in the Affordable Care Act that insurance programs must cover pre-existing conditions. Insurance companies say the drawback of that plan is that many younger adults forgo these plans to save money. And once very few of them come down with a serious illness, they go ahead and get on the insurance program as a pre-existing condition. If you're elected to Congress, what would you do to close what many see as a loophole in the pre-existing plan where young adults don't bother to go on insurance unless it's necessary for very few of them, and they don't participate in the insurance pool, which keeps down healthcare costs?
Affordable health care is a very important part of Congress's agenda going forward. The pre-existing condition clause needs to continue and be there. My youngest son was born with biliary atresia. So from day one, he had a problem that would have limited the kind of health insurance he could have had. Fortunately, we had good health insurance. What we need to do to make sure that more young adults have policies is we need to incentivize them. The best way to incentivize them is to make health insurance more affordable. In making health insurance more affordable, we need to look at the #1 issue with expensive health insurance, and that's the cost of the healthcare delivery system. That is a big problem. Today, the United States healthcare is twice as much as any developed country in the world. We need to bring that down. There's plenty of ways to do that. Just simply from the standpoint of having a look at how a hospital bills patients. Duke University Medical Center has 900 doctors and 1,300 billing clerks. So we see we have some problems. We need to streamline the system, get the expenses under control. Health insurance will be more affordable, and we'll have more young people insured.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser.
You know, Danny, you say the things you say, and you know that they're false, but you just say them anyway because you have no ideas and no plans to move our country forward or the 9th Congressional. I'm not going to get that in the gutter with you. I've proven those accusations false time and time again. The way we fix what you're referring to is by repealing and replacing Obamacare. We're going to find on virtually every issue tonight, my opponent and I see things 180 degrees different. He thinks, for the most part, Obamacare is terrific. I think it's hurting people and families throughout the 9th Congressional. Every day I meet families of 4 that are paying $2,500 a month for their health care insurance with $6,000, $7,000 deductibles, and it's done nothing but go up every year. We need to repeal and replace. We need to allow people to have more choices of quality health care. We need to allow sales of health care plans over state lines. There is no reason at all that health insurance cannot be paid for in the same manner and purchased as car insurance. Obamacare did away with group purchasing plans or association plans. The Farm Bureau had 12,000 members in its association, and that was eliminated by the liberals when they pushed through the health care. A lot's being done right now, though. We've removed the gag rule. We've brought down the price of prescription drugs. We have a president that calls prescription pharmaceutical CEOs.
Thank you, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf, you have 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Rebuttal. First off, I would like to know how Mr. Muser is going to bring down the cost of health care. There's been no suggestion as to how you do that. The problem is the health care delivery system is charging outrageous prices. That needs to be brought under control. Then we'll start talking about insuring something that is a reasonable price. So I would like to ask Mr. Muser how he plans to bring the health care insurance costs down.
Mr. Muser, 30 seconds.
Well, there's many ways of doing it. There's something called rooting out waste, abuse, and fraud, which the administration that he was in and Democrats know nothing about. There's also other efficiency measures, such as allowing drugs to be negotiated directly by Medicare. You know, right now, we've allowed this, and under President Obama, Europe, we pay 250% more for pharmaceuticals than our allies in Europe do. We are going to change that. If I'm in Congress, I'm going to help change that.
We move on to the second question. It will be posed by Peter Bortner from the Pottsville Republican Herald. And the first to answer the question is Mr. Muser.
Okay, Mr. Muser, there's a caravan headed toward the United States, and it's not necessarily a friendly one. It's coming from Central America, and it consists of illegal immigrants. What do you think are the best ways to change our immigration system? Should we build a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, for instance? Should chain migration be ended? And those immigrants in Central America who believe they are in danger in their home countries, should they be made to stay in Mexico, where no one has alleged that they are in danger?
Well, the caravan is a challenging situation. We do have laws, so clearly they should not be permitted to step foot in our country. Gestures have already been made allowing potentially for some of them to come in with work visas, all of which is being turned away. A lot of this is political, and for good measure, they find it necessary to burn American flags on the way in. Just another view of the chaos for problem solving instead of actual problem solving. Illegal immigration is a very big issue for the people of the 9th Congressional. They have real problems with it, and they feel that their taxpayer dollars are very much supporting them. The police in the 9th Congressional and the sheriffs tell me a lot of the drugs that we're dealing with, including heroin, is coming from the border, and there's human trafficking and other problems. Yes, we need to build a wall. The Border Patrol wants a wall. They say where the wall is, that's not where they have to worry about illegals entering. We absolutely need to build a wall. It will be the right return on investment. We do need to defund sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are ridiculous. You know, when we're hanging out a carrot, such as amnesty, like my opponent talks about, to bring all illegals into the system, then we don't have to worry about sanctuary cities, is what he said in the last debate. That is the wrong message, and by all means, it's the wrong policy that I certainly won't be.
Thank you, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf.
3 components to this. We need to secure our borders, first and foremost. It's a huge part of national security, having secure borders. Number 2, we need to put in place a visa program that works, a visa program that is user-friendly, less bureaucratic, and something that even our farmers can use, because today this is such a challenge for them. Many of them are even changing the way they farm. They're not growing the same crops they used to because they can't count on our visa system. And third, we need to deal with the 12 million plus undocumented residents of this country. Now, my opponent says, you know, we shouldn't deal with that. And that's, I mean, he would fit right in Congress, because Congress hasn't dealt with this for 20 years. We've got a lot of people here. We need to decide how we're going to register them. I'm not talking about citizenship. I'm talking about some kind of a temporary visa where you do a background check. You find out if they owe back taxes. If we want to fine them, that is fine, but put in some place to put a way to bring these 12 million people into the system so we know who's here, and the ones that have a criminal record, they can be deported. The ones that do not have a criminal record, we need to identify them and then make them pay the penalty and issue them a visa, and then go from there. Because you can't deport 12 million people. It would be like deporting everybody that lives in Pennsylvania. It's just simply not an option on the list. So if we want to just continue to do nothing, we can do that, or we can take this up and decide what we're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser, rebuttal.
So my opponent is against the wall, and he's for amnesty. Again, great plan. You know, the president did offer an agreement, a deal, if you will, funding to build the wall, to add to our national security and border security, for legislation which would allow the DACA children to stay here, not as citizens, but to have legal status. Not one Democrat backed it, completely for political purposes. They're not interested in solving problems. The Pelosi Democrats
Thank you,
are not
Mr.
interested in
Muser.
solving
Mr.
problems.
Wolf,
They're
you have
interested in
30
power.
seconds.
Yes, I'm not talking about amnesty. That's never come out of my mouth. Once again, Mr. Muser has a problem understanding what I say. We're looking at, we're looking at a problem that we need to solve. And that problem is 12 million people that are here that are undocumented. We need to decide what we're going to do with it. I guess I would like to ask Mr. Muser what his plan is. I guess it's do nothing, just like Congress has done for the last 20 years. But I have a plan as to how you bring them into the system, and you get them registered, and you know who's here.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. We move on to the third question. It comes from Dr. Chris Hallenbrook from Bloomsburg University. And the first to respond will be Mr. Wolf.
Recently, several municipalities in Pennsylvania have decriminalized marijuana. However, under existing law, Pennsylvanians can face federal prosecution for possession even if they are arrested in municipalities that have decriminalized. Likewise, Pennsylvanians utilizing the state's medical marijuana system are also subject to prosecution by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Would you support legislation that was introduced earlier in this year in the Senate to protect those who are using marijuana where it's legal in their locality?
I would suggest that marijuana for medical use, I support 100%. I have no problem with that. I think it's important. I think it serves a very important purpose for people to have certain illnesses. I do not support legalizing marijuana for recreational use. I would like to see how some other states make out going forward. I'm from the old school. I haven't, I think that marijuana could lead to uses of other drugs. That's the way that I grew up. That's the way that I look at it. And I want to see how some of these other states make out before I would take that next step.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser.
I understand the need for marijuana for medical use. I am for the decriminalization of small amounts of marijuana. I don't want to see young people or anyone go to jail for a small amount of personal use. And I do think we need some national legislation to allow banks, since marijuana is legal to be grown in many states. The banking system regulations have not kept up so as it can be handled properly.
Thank you. All right, we move on to round two of the questions. And Peter Bortner will be the first to ask the question, and it goes to Mr. Muser first.
Okay, with the economy performing well, what are the best ways to keep growth continuing? And under that, how would you change the tax system to keep the economy growing? And what changes, if any, would you make to trade agreements?
Well, the best way of keeping our economy going is very much doing the things we're doing, do them better and accentuate all the positives. I was absolutely for the Tax and Jobs Act passed at the beginning of this year. Not one Democrat in Congress voted for it. It put anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 in the pockets of the people of the 9th Congressional. It lowered small business tax. I have friends in this room with small businesses. They hired people because of the savings that occurred. And look at the results. We now have an economy with unemployment as low as it's been since 1969. Manufacturing confidence is higher, as high as it's been since 1984. Every demographic is showing great employment. And there's a great level of consumer confidence. So we're doing a lot of the right things. We need to do more. We need to engage in regulatory reform. We need to repeal and replace Obamacare. People their disposable incomes are getting crushed. And we need to continue to seek responsible energy dependence. Related to, and then there's work to be done at home. There's quite a bit of work to be done here at home in bringing in capital investment and revitalizing many of our great cities throughout the 9th Congressional. Related to tariffs, nothing's been done with tariffs since 1945, more or less. We did have NAFTA back in 1996, but its day has come. The president is for fair, reciprocal, and free trade. That's what I am for.
Thank you, Mr.
We can
Muser.
get the zero tariffs.
Your time has elapsed, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf.
Well, growing the economy, something that's important, especially here in the 9th Congressional District. And I would do that by rebuilding the middle class. We need quality jobs here in the 9th Congressional District. There is a great demand for skilled labor. We do not have a workforce to fill those jobs. We need to make sure that we take advantage of that because that's good for everyone. That's good for wages. It is good for industries that want to expand. And it is good for the growth of our local economy. And it keeps our next generation here, near home. You simply do that by making sure your career and technical schools are adequately funded so that the Perkins grants are available and they can modernize their classrooms so that they can make available curriculum and certain skill sets that can be taught in their classroom. That is what is needed in the area by local industry. That is something that fills the void, lets industries grow, improves the wages for people in the 9th Congressional District, and moves our agenda forward. Let me just speak briefly about trade. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I served on the WTO, and I understand how those agreements are written. They take a lot of time. They're complex. They need to be renegotiated on occasion, but I do not believe in tariffs. The last person that imposed tariffs in the United States was in 2002. It was President Bush, and it's estimated that cost 200,000 jobs. Today, tariffs
Thank you,
are
Mr. Wolf.
causing...
Your time has elapsed. We move on to the next question. It comes from Dr. Chris Hallenbrook, and the first to respond will be Mr. Wolf.
So, in his last budget, President Trump proposed eliminating the LIHEAP program that helps low-income seniors, including many in this district, heat their homes. Would you oppose the president's next budget if it too eliminated LIHEAP?
No, I would not support a budget that does not have LIHEAP. It's a great program. It was administered here in Pennsylvania. I had some experience with that when I worked as Secretary of Agriculture, because many of the people that took advantage of that program also were part of a program that we had that was called the Supplemental Food Program, where we made dollars and food available to the food pantries in Pennsylvania. So it's a real challenge. People that are going through tough times, that's a great resource for them. It helps them deal with weather conditions, cold weather. It assures that they're going to have a warm home, and there's other programs like that that helps them. So I have a real soft spot for that. I was born and raised in rural Pennsylvania, so that was a real eye-opener. People that are financially at risk, people that are nutritionally at risk, even here in our rural areas. Many times they're working families. So it's not all about the suburbs in the urban areas like people would tend to make you believe. There's many people that benefit from that. It's a good program, and it helps people that are having a tough time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser.
As a member of Congress representing the 9th Congressional, I will work for the people. I will represent them and do all possible to improve their lives in every way that I can. And largely that means the people in the 9th care about their families and they care about their country. They care very much. What matters to them also is their disposable income and their quality of life. So something like LIHEAP absolutely is very important. I would be very supportive of it. It is something that people have told me over the course of the last 14 months that I've been working the district, meeting thousands and thousands of people, and it is something I'd be supportive of.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wolf, you want to? All right. Let's move on to the next question. Dave Bowman from WNEP will ask the question, and Mr. Muser, you will answer first.
Mr. Muser, earlier this month, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change came out with a report, and its claim was that human-induced global warming is no longer even in dispute, and that with every passing year, inaction on reducing carbon emissions threatens life on the planet in many ways. My question is twofold. Number one, do you believe that global warming due to man-made emissions is indeed a threat, as many people in your party do not? And number two, if you are elected to Congress, what steps do you believe the United States should do and take to go ahead and combat this?
Well, you know, CO2 is up in our atmosphere. This is due to humans and deforestation. Greenhouse gases are up, methane, water vapor, CO2. The data shows temperature increases over the last 100 years have gone up about 0.6 degrees Celsius, about 1 degree Fahrenheit. I believe in data. In God we trust, but everybody else bring their data. And I believe this data to be so. But there's also information that shows that the Earth's temperature 2,000 years ago was quite a bit warmer during the Roman Empire. People will say that today we have very, very severe hurricanes. We do. But they were more severe 70 or 80 years ago. Many people have opinions on this issue. And the issue has become terribly politicized. It's ridiculous in many ways, right? For instance, if you believe climate change is cyclical, you are a boorish denier. If you believe that climate change is due to humans, you are seen by many as an environmental extremist. This is both. Both conclusions are very unfair. Here's what I know. Our country's air, water, is cleaner. Air and water is cleaner than it was when I was a kid. The Clean Water Act of 1972 worked, and along with a lot of social consciousness.
Mr. Muser, your time has elapsed. Mr. Wolf.
Well, I'm a dairy farmer, so sound science is part of my schedule every morning I get up. And sound science dictates that global warming is a real problem, and global warming is man-made. It's a problem we need to deal with, but we don't want to regulate people out of business. But it needs to be part of what we do. It needs to be part of our strategic plan. I think green energy is a great part of the future. We're not there yet, but we need to work toward that. And eventually, I think we will make it there. But right now, I think that we need to just make sure that we do everything we can to deal with our carbon emissions. I know that that's something that agriculture is involved with continually in terms of livestock agriculture and our farming practices. So we try to incorporate those good practices in what we do so that we minimize the amount of carbon emissions from our farming operation, as do all the farmers in Pennsylvania. So once again, just to reiterate, It is science-based information. It is man-made. We need to deal with it. It's a responsible thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser, 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
Yeah, I do think that the U.S. should take the lead, but we shouldn't be expected to do it on our own. China, India, Russia, the Pacific Rim are really billowing pollutants into our air. And on this issue, we really need to stop polluting this issue with politics.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, we move on to round 3 of questions. The first to pose a question is Dr. Chris Hallenbrook, and it will be Mr. Wolf will respond first.
So this next question is from a student at Bloomsburg University. Would you support expanded background checks, including mental health history, as a requirement of purchasing a firearm?
I think that my position has been on the Second Amendment is I'm obviously very pro-Second Amendment because I'm a dairy farmer, I've been a deer hunter my entire life. I respect the responsible sportsmen that we have in this country, and I respect the laws that we have in place today. I think we need to fully implement the laws that are on the books today. That would include background checks. We need a system where we get accurate and timely information, and it needs to be updated on a regular basis so that we keep the guns out of hands of people that are criminals, out of the hands of people that have PFAs against them, and out of the hands of people that also have mental illness. And that one's more of a challenge because I know that information is protected. But that is the cause of most of our gun violence. Those 3 parts of society, we need to make sure we have a system in place where we can, in a timely manner, see if someone qualifies or doesn't qualify for a gun. And if that then doesn't work going forward, we need to look at if there's a need for any legislative prescriptions. But as of now, we need to make sure that's working 100%.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser.
Well, I'm a constitutionalist, and I believe strongly in our Second Amendment right. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. I too, am a hunter. My son and I hunt quite a bit. I conceal carry. I grew up with my father's a police officer, so we were taught gun safety from a very early age. And in fact, I am an NRA member. Now, on the same note, I care greatly about the issues that exist, the horrific, at least sad, issue that occurred just out in mass murder. That occurred in Pittsburgh, in the synagogue. So we need to take a look at what needs to be done and actually do something about it. There's been many such instances of horrific mass shootings, and not a lot has been done since. So what we probably need to do is stop politicizing this once again and just focusing on firearms and focus on some of the things that you mentioned there, such as mental health and improving our instant check systems, both in Pennsylvania and nationally. We also need to treat the flags that we see, the alerts, just as the intelligence organization looks at terrorist threats. We stop many terrorist threats through intel. Well, when we see someone who's full of hate and sending out signals that they are,
thank you. Thank you.
We should respond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muser. We'll move on to the next question. Dave Bowman will be posing the question, and the first to answer is Mr. Muser.
Okay, I thought it was in a different order. That's okay. Critics of President Trump say tax cuts enacted last year stimulated an already growing economy, but it disproportionately benefited corporations and the wealthy. And it was added that this is the latest attempt at what is known as trickle-down economics, where the working class has to wait for the benefits of a strong economy and sometimes never receive it at all. In addition, even the Wall Street Journal, a conservative publication, cited economists as saying tax cuts grew the federal deficit by 17%. My question is, what does Congress do about the growing federal deficit, and were the tax cuts fair to the working class and lower class?
Well, the middle class, so-called middle class, middle-income folks did receive a 3.5% basically tax reduction. The upper received 1.5%. Small business, where 60% of people who received their income and paychecks, received approximately 20%. And yes, the corporate was more significant. We need to do all possible to grow from the middle out. We need to work for the people, I do think that the special interest that exists in Washington is certainly more for the haves and maybe not so much for the have-nots. So, yes, I would certainly be for extending the middle class tax cuts and making them larger. That is one thing that I'd certainly want to do. And I think that we need overall an economy that simply works for more people. And that is done through the macro issues of regulatory reform, lowering the expenses behind Obamacare, but also engaging very much here at home, working on flooding issues. Flooding issues for people throughout the 9th District have been devastating. It's hurt their homes, hurt their businesses. We have an opioid epidemic that's making the neighborhoods unsafe. Schools are not as safe as people want them to be. So, that's really where the work needs to be.
Thank you, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf.
The tax bill. The issue that comes to mind is fairness. When I look at how the tax bill was written and how the upper 1% of the population, the upper 1% of the taxpayers is awarded a $54,000 tax break, it's a real reflection on Congress today. You can see who wrote the bill. Middle-class America didn't make out so well. They were not fairly treated in this deal. Just no question about it. The other problem, it adds to the deficit. And I may be the only conservative one up here, but a $21 trillion debt bothers me. I have grandchildren. Somebody has to take care of that. I know when I operate my farm, there's two sides of the budget. There's income and expense. There has to be a correlation there. You can't borrow your way out of debt. Interest payments are fast becoming one of our largest expenditures at federal government, and in the future they expect it will surpass our defense budget. So there are really important issues that we need to deal with. We need to tighten our belt. When I was Pennsylvania Secretary of Agriculture, we had to have a balanced budget. So if revenues didn't live up to what we were working with throughout the year, we had to do what they called a rebudget. So we had to realign our resources with the way that we were spending money. So that's the way I would approach it. We need to make sure that we have a method to...
Thank you so much, Mr. Wolf. A rebuttal from Mr. Muser.
I have to laugh. Democrats love the idea of keeping the money for the government and doling it out and can't stand the idea of giving it to people to spend on their own. I also have to laugh. For 8 years, President Obama spent $10 trillion with pretty much nothing to show for it, and not once did we hear about deficits. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. Revenues are going up 2.5%. Spending continues to go up 4%. You're the only conservative up here. In the last 3 presidential elections, I voted for John McCain, Mitt Romney, and Donald Trump. Who did you vote for?
The opposites.
That doesn't sound very conservative to me.
Thank you, Mr. Muser. All right.
Rebuttal?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't hear him tell me how he was going to solve the $21 trillion debt we have against our country.
Waste, abuse, and fraud and efficiencies, just like I did at the Department of Revenue. I lowered our overhead by 15%, reduced our complement by 7%, and our services went up. So did revenues.
Yes.
Yes. Well, you would need to tighten your belt a little bit with the $4.5 million you spent trying to privatize the lottery system that never went through. So I understand how tough that could have been.
Let's move on. All right, the next question comes from Peter Bortner, and the first to answer will be Mr. Wolf.
David. Every part of the country, including Northeast Pennsylvania, has been affected by terrorism. From the Twin Towers to such mundane things as longer lines at airports for checks to get on flights. Now, what are the best ways in your minds to combat terrorism? And as part of that, do we need to keep a permanent military presence in the Middle East?
Well, I think one of the greatest threats we have today is cybersecurity. And that's the way that terrorism can actually sneak in the back door and create huge problems here, whether it's attacking our utility grid or other parts of our infrastructure. That would be a real nightmare. But I understand that, the Middle East is something that is an important part of our agenda. Fortunately, we're a little less reliant on as we were at one time because we don't depend on them as much for the fuel that we use here in the United States. That was always such a huge part of our reason and our presence there. but we still need to maintain our presence there. We need to put in place programs and make sure that the agreements we have with the people in the Middle East, that we continue forward with them. One of the real issues right now is our relationship with Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince has made some decisions that are certainly look like he's on a power trip that are concerning the United States, at least they're concerning me, in terms of what they have recently done as well as previously with their bombing of Yemen that created many casualties for civilians and particularly children. So nothing simple, but we need to maintain our relationships there. It is certainly an area, a part of the world that there's a lot of concern. We need to make sure we continue our presence there and continue our relationships there.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser.
We've been there a long time, and it is a concern, but we do need to listen and follow the direction of the commanders in the field. It's working. Look at ISIS, for instance. ISIS is virtually eliminated, and we are changing the strategic plans, and we are, in fact, winding down to largely special forces or special ops planning, as opposed to large-scale numbers of military personnel in the field. So we do what is in effect is working. We are not publicizing it every day and to the general public or to our enemy, like was done in the previous administration. But the work that is being done there, we are winding down, we are training, and we're assuring that we don't leave a problem behind.
Thank you, Mr. Muser. We'll move on. We'll move on to the next question, and it will come from Dave Bowman. And we will first hear from Mr. Muser.
Mr. Muser, there are no sanctuary cities in the 9th District right now, but there are many people in your district that you seek to represent who believe the concept of having larger cities like Philadelphia, having a local law superseding a federal law, is wrong. Many people believe that if sanctuary cities are to be eliminated, the best solution is to do what President Reagan did in 1980 to get states to comply with raising the drinking age from 18 to 21 by withholding important federal funds and forcing the change. You have said, for the record, you're against sanctuary cities. Do you believe this is a correct and fair approach to sanctuary cities to withhold federal funds to get them to change?
I do. It would certainly solve the issue that we're talking about laws here. We're talking about whether we're a lawful society following federal laws or not. That's on the ballot. Lawfulness versus kind of making things up as we go along. Sanctuary cities are highly inappropriate. They are just as they are what they sound. It's attractive for illegals to want to cross over our border illegally, obviously, very often bringing things with them that will help them make a living, such as drugs, and it encourages human trafficking. And law enforcement certainly has a big problem with it. ICE as well. I mean, they depend upon, if you speak with folks who work for ICE, they depend on their relationship with the city police in Philadelphia in order to catch those who they deem are bad. And are real criminals because they're not supposed to contact them. And unfortunately, in these cities, there's a bit of a revolving door. People come in, they get arrested for drugs or whatever it might be, some sort of burglary, and they're back in the street. We're allowing this to occur, and it's absolutely wrong, and it needs to be addressed. And the people of the 9th District and the American people want a resolution. And defunding sanctuary cities is the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf.
Well, look, I think we're not dealing with the real problem. The real problem is we have 12 million undocumented residents in this country. We need to bring them into the system. We need to issue them visas. We need to find out who is here. We need to find out the ones that have a criminal record and deport them. And then you have a starting point. The sanctuary city issue is really a symptom of a much bigger problem, and that is illegal immigrants that we have to deal with. Congress continues to kick that down the road. We need to deal with it. We have to decide what we're going to do with the 12 million people that are here. We need to bring them into the system, and it takes away the issue with the sanctuary cities. The FOP opposes defunding of sanctuary cities, and that's an organization that I feel strongly that has an opinion that matters. I am not going to say, as a dairy farmer from Columbia County, I know how Philadelphia should run their business down there, just like I don't think their police department should come up and tell me how to run my farm. So I think what we need to do is solve the problem by putting in place a program to register the people that are here illegally, go forward with that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're quickly coming to the end of the debate, and I will opt to ask a question as we come down. What do you see, and Mr. Wolf, you'll answer this first, what do you see as consider the biggest economic challenge in the district, and how would you meet that challenge?
Well, that's a good one. I think, you know, it depends on whether you're looking at the economy or the workforce that's here, and in many ways they tie hand in hand. We have an economy here that's doing okay, but they haven't really experienced the economic boom that people in Wall Street have. You know, the average wage in Wall Street went up 13% last year. They now make $422,000 a year. The people here in the 9th Congressional District, they make about $40,000 a year. Their pay went up about 2% a year. So there's a big disparity there. So we need to look at programs and things that we can do right here in the 9th Congressional District that'll help change that. And I think you change that simply by making sure that you take advantage of all the programs that are there to rebuild the middle class. You put in place programs that help the next generation and retrain the existing workforce to take care of skilled jobs. There's a great opportunity there. They're good paying jobs. It's going to keep the next generation here, and it's going to keep the economy rolling forward here in the 9th Congressional District.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Mr. Muser.
It's a good question. You know, some people have the idea of going to Congress and being in Washington and getting involved in international relations. What I'm going to be focused on is revitalizing many cities throughout Schuylkill County, Luzerne County, Carbon County, and neighborhoods. What we're going to do is we're going to work on attracting capital investment. We're going to lay out plans. We're going to all work together, the commissioners, township supervisors, the state representatives. We've talked about this many times, and there's nothing that I'm going to feel better about in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years when we start seeing our work result in real revitalization, real development. And so there's something called opportunity zones that were in the Tax and Jobs Act. Unfortunately, the governor only put one place in the 9th, Tamaqua, in an opportunity zone, but it creates a great opportunity for investment to come in to a city with some significant tax breaks. So the work that we could do, that's what's going to leave a footprint. Attracting new jobs, new employers, definitely workforce development, working with all the great schools that we have. And, you know, this is what's going to leave footprints and really make a difference. And I mentioned the flooding issues before. That's ridiculous that we live with that year after year. You know, it's always the low-income areas that get flooded repeatedly, not the nicer areas. And that's
Thank you, Mr. Muser. Peter Bortner, we have time for one more question.
Should Robert Mueller's investigation be ended now in light of how far it has strayed from Russian collusion? And if not, what limits should be placed on it in terms of time and money and scope?
This will go to Mr. Muser first.
Well, I'll answer. I got to answer it this way. If the House of Representatives goes Democrat and Nancy Pelosi becomes the Speaker of the House, we can certainly count on many more Russian investigations. I mean, their number one goal largely is to engage in some sort of offbeat impeachment process of the president. I mean, we got a big decision coming up on November 6th. We're either going to move in the direction of where the country's going and do the things that I'm talking about as far as advancing our country economically and creating wages and helping create opportunities for better life, or we're going to head in the direction of obstruction, impeachment, resistance, and what we've been seeing on the news, chaos. So yeah, we do need to be very careful and take this into mind come this election, and well, that's what I have to say on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf?
Well, I think Mr. Mueller is doing a good job. I mean, I think he's, he's spent a lot of time and energy. He keeps a low profile, so we don't get much of a heads up on what's going on down there. But I would encourage him to move it forward. I think it is a problem. I think it's dividing this country. So I think that he needs to take his team and, continue to move forward and try to do it in a timely manner and to make sure that we have good, accurate information. That's what we're going to need to see how this unfolds. But I think he has the respect of many people, and that he is doing a good and a competent job. He just needs to bring it to a close as soon as he can.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Well, we've come to the end of the actual debate, and we're now ready for the closing statements. And the first to make the closing statement will be Mr. Muser.
Well, again, I greatly appreciate the opportunity the WVIA has provided. I'm running for Congress because I love my country, because I want to serve my country. And I do not think the people of the 9th feel that our government has served our country in the best manner possible. There is a lot of self-interest in Congress. There is a lot of special interest. There is not enough we the people interest. Getting back to the Constitution, and that's the one oath of office you take, to uphold the Constitution, so help you God, and to the people that you make commitments to. And I spent over 20 plus years in business. When you make commitments to people, you keep them. I have that gene. It's about being responsive. It's about treating the constituents just in the same manner that I used to treat customers. And yes, there's some great contrast in this contest. My opponent sees things from a very, very left standpoint. He believes everything he talks about is about bigger government, less raise taxes, less regulations. Obamacare is terrific. No border security. I'm more about focusing on the private sector. We need to grow the private sector, and many things take care of themselves. And we do have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, November 6th, we will be voting for what direction we want our country to go. Will we continue down a path of growth? Will we accomplish the things that can be accomplished in the next 2 years? Truly improving Obamacare, first by repealing it and then replacing it and making certain that pre-existing conditions continue. By securing Social Security for the long term and saving it. Making Medicare work better for people. In fact, draining the swamp, engaging in a program so we get a balanced budget amendment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muser. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. It's great to be here. One of my favorite sayings is, the life you've lived makes you the person that you are. I was born and raised on a dairy farm. I raised my 5 children there. I sent all 5 children to college, and most of them graduated. My opponent's a successful businessman, no doubt about it. He makes a lot of money, and as he said after a recent debate, is making money bad? He keeps his production costs low. He keeps it low by importing products from China, from Taiwan, and Hong Kong. And in fact, they imported 34,000 tons of materials from those countries in the last 2 years. And of course, you realize that would cut your cost of production, because the minimum wage in China is as low as $1.85 an hour in some places. And child labor laws, they still get violated there. This certainly enhances his profits, no doubt about it. But then, when you have that kind of money, it takes a lot of money to buy 5 houses, to have a fleet of cars, to have 2 airplanes, to have a boat. That's a pretty fast lifestyle, and it takes money. On top of that, he gets his income from you, the taxpayer, because most of the customers that buy his products are people that are on Medicare and Medicaid. And yes, there was a little problem with fraud there that I mentioned earlier. Yes, my opponent has a lot of money. You have 2 very different candidates here today. You have one with rural values that wants to work for the people of the 9th Congressional District. And you have one that wants to be a member of Congress. He thinks that he can do it just like he did when he became Secretary of Revenue, when he donated to Governor Corbett $87,000. and then he was appointed Secretary of Revenue. And now he wants to buy a seat here in the 9th Congressional District. It's going to be up to the voters to decide if that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Well, that concludes this debate between the candidates for the 9th Congressional District seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. Thanks to Mr. Muser and thanks to Mr. Wolf for participating, and thanks to our panel. This brings to an end WVIA Public Media's series of congressional debates, and we hope that you found these programs informative and useful. This and the District 8 debate will be available on demand online at WVIA.org. Please remember to vote next Tuesday, November 6th. I'm Larry Voitko. Thanks for watching, and good night.